Taliah, but there's nothing on it as yet.
Can you see that?
No, it just says Taliah. That's it, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, having gone through an FII accusation, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And so I just wanted to try to put together some thoughts on what we can do as parents to, once we've been accused or if we suspect we're under investigation. The first thing I wanted to tell everybody, first thing I think is most important is what you're already doing. Just don't go through this alone. The first thing that I say to any parent or family that I'm supporting is that you need to find and contact a specialist solicitor and take legal advice. And I appreciate a lot of people aren't in court yet. They might think this isn't yet necessary, but you're entitled to a free hour legal advice from every single solicitor in the country. Take it, use it, ask questions. Don't be afraid to go out and get information. I really believe that if we had more information earlier on about our rights, we could probably navigate this better. And I think in the cases that I've seen, getting legal advice early prevents the misuse of Section 20 removals, where children are consented to enter care by their parents who maybe don't fully understand the legal ramifications of signing that document. It brings clarity to the case early, and it supports families to begin what can be a very lengthy evidence gathering process. So many cases, like my own, become very protracted because of how long it takes to get the necessary pieces of information together. I'd encourage every parent to reach out to your medical support and advocacy community, like SWAN, Syndromes Without a Name, SHINE, autism, charities and societies. Reach out because often they do have support workers who can come to meetings, who can attend the school, who can support to be your voice, where in a way you almost don't have a voice anymore, if you understand what I mean. When mom says, my child's doing this, it's questioned. When the SHINE support worker says, children with this condition do this, everybody takes it seriously. And it just takes you off the front line a little bit. I would always advocate for advocacy. Get an advocacy worker, get 3 if you need them. The NHS theoretically has advocacy workers. I appreciate those are in limited supply and they are of variable quality. But if you can get a parent advocate, get one of those. If you can get a mental health advocate, get one of those. If you have a disability or a condition, get an advocate for them. Build your team, build your army, build your village. And I would encourage you to, as you've done, find your parent community. You're not the only one going through this, even if it feels like, how could this possibly happen to anybody, let alone me? And as you build your village, you're going to be a lot stronger, not just because you're sharing resources, but so we have to come together and talk about this. I encourage every parent going through this to take a deep breath and remember that knowledge is power. Subject access request all your family's records regularly. I appreciate it's pedantic. It's a nightmare having to go through it. It'll come to you like it looks like they've just picked up all the papers and thrown them in the air and they've landed randomly on the floor. And it can be quite triggering, but having that information is key to understanding the storyline behind the scenes and being able to piece together what maybe is missing or perhaps going wrong or what needs to happen next. I would request copies of all procedural and complaints guidance from everybody you have contact with. Not necessarily because you'll use them, but it's good to know because I think so many of us go through this the first time around and we aren't aware that we could have actually said, hey, wait, I was entitled to that information in writing. Oh, this is how I speak up when I don't feel comfortable. I was allowed to second guess that. I didn't have to give consent. there's a lot that we aren't told. Now, I appreciate, I'm also talking to a lot of people who are very, very well versed in all this. So I appreciate I'm probably saying everything you already know, but familiarize yourself with the guidance and policies on child well-being, safeguarding, parenting assessments, and FII. There is so much information out there, and it's worth reading every variation and iteration of it, and also asking if your local authority has their own version, because those can vary quite a bit. And that will give you an idea of what they're going off of, so you know what their flow chart is and what they're looking for. And then learn about data protection rules, your human rights, and the Children's Act. As we know, these are, again, not often parents end up knowing them better than it feels like some of the professionals do. And it can be a bit of a sticking point because it can be so frustrating when you feel like the rules only apply to one side. Like, you feel like there's a lot of difficulty in upholding them, but it helps to know where things are going well, where things are going wrong, and to be able to start documenting what's happening in a coherent narrative to stand up for yourself. Now, meeting your needs. I think that's one of the first things that goes out the window when you have a child with a disability. And it especially goes out the window once you enter the child protection arena. But your needs still matter. Your child needs you. Everything's weighing down on your shoulders. So you need to take care of you. So don't be afraid to admit that you have needs, but be choosy about where you go for support. You need support. If you had a pre-existing condition, don't go without the support for it or try to hide it. Surround yourself with the support you need so that you can be the strongest person you can be to get through this. And do whatever you need to maintain financial stability. Don't let pride get in the way of claiming benefits. If you can, get an advocacy worker to claim benefits for you, so it wasn't you applying for disability benefits, it was a professional. Or if it's the case that what you need to do to stay sane is keep working, keep working. Don't let them get inside your head and go the route of trying to please everybody. I've seen parents who have been criticized for working. They're not prioritizing the child, they say. I've seen parents criticized for claiming benefits. It'll go both ways. They'll criticize you, whatever, but do what you need to do to stay afloat, because that's important. Surround yourself with support that shores up your fragile points, whether it's disability, mental health, domestic abuse. Let your village be there for you. There is a big drive to hide, to try to be tough all alone. Let your village be there for you so that they can support you, because there's going to be times where you need somebody to pick you up and carry you forward the 3 steps before you can get back up and fight again. And that's okay. You're human. You're not doing a bad job. Keep in touch with the friends who get it. And what I would say is let go of the ones that don't. Don't keep the negative friends in your life. You've already got other negative people in your life that you don't get a choice in. So keep the friends that are there who get it with you, but don't hesitate to let go of those who just really don't. And keep you safe. If you feel overwhelmed, reach out. If you're having one of those nights where everything feels black and you feel like you're drowning, reach out, but keep yourself safe. And that's why that village is so important. One of the things we sort of dance around is what this does to parents' mental health and their mental well-being, and the number of parents who do feel suicidal, and do get really, really low moments. And that's why you need the people who get it in your village around you. And more than one, because this is really hard. You can't lean only on one person. You need to have more than one support. And once you've been accused, or you think that you're under investigation, appointments get 10 times harder, 100 times harder, a million times more stressful, and there's so many of them. As was touched on earlier, it's controversial. but most parents find recording for personal use helpful. Most professionals probably will say no if you ask. That's something that's very much open for discussion and I think needs to be a continuing. Parents that I know record. And the reason why we do this is as much as anything to be able to process the intense workload of information that we're receiving while under such pressure. It's really important to be able to actually understand what people said and to know that what you heard wasn't just what you fear you heard, or to be able to listen back and find that the tone wasn't what you thought it might be, or to glean more information about what actually happened, because it's really hard to process in a stressful situation. But back at home in your comfort zone, you can re-listen to that conversation in a way that helps you better process it. Now, we all know when you're under investigation or if you've been accused, everything you're doing is being weighed and measured. So when you're anxious, keep your answers short and never hesitate to say, I need to think about that, rather than try to answer a question on the spot. They're looking for consistency, and it's so hard to remember everything and be absolutely spot on accurate when our children aren't consistent, medical conditions aren't consistent, medical professionals aren't consistent, and you're really, really stressed. So don't be afraid to say, I need to think about that first, or can I come back to you about that? You don't have to answer every question every time you're asked. Do ask for information in writing and any recommendations by professionals in writing. Again, I think you'll find that there tends to be a lot of defensiveness in this area, but if you can get it in writing, it helps you have a statement in place. And don't feel that you're no longer able to ask questions. It's just how you ask questions is key. These, by and large, medical professionals seem to have very thin skins. I'm sure that's maybe not how they describe it, but they do not like being quizzed, as you've noticed. And so asking questions in a very gentle way, or in a, could you explain that to me sort of way, tends to get better results of building those relationships than if you put it to them in a way that they've made a mistake. They struggle with that. And to every appointment, I would bring a friend or an advocate. Bring your sister, bring your best friend, bring somebody to be there to take notes, to support you, to be the person who asks that question that you can't ask. If you're under investigation, you can't ask a direct question about a condition that you want them to look into, because that might be something to do with it. But the advocate for your child could. Your friend could say, has this been looked at in a way that won't be attributed to mom being pushy or mom constantly looking for a diagnosis? I touched on that I think everybody needs good legal advice. Hopefully nobody ever needs to use it. But if you need a solicitor, if this goes into child protection, this is a very specific area of law, and you need a solicitor who has previous experience of this type of case. A general family lawyer will not know what they're doing. They don't know. You need somebody who has a template or a model for success in combining medical and family court. I would encourage you and anybody who's looking for a solicitor to speak to many solicitors. Don't go with the first solicitor you speak to, if at all possible. Find somebody you connect with and you feel has enthusiasm for your case, because there's nothing worse than being 3/4 of the way through this process and losing faith in your solicitor and feeling like you don't have enough time before your fact finding to find somebody else or bring somebody else on. or you've started to feel that they haven't done all they could do, I would encourage everybody to always remember that your solicitor works for you. I found this very difficult, but I'm a solicitor's wife, and he would remind me frequently, this person is working for you. You don't have to do what they say. They have to do what you say. It's really hard to wrap your head around when you're in this situation, but this is where you actually hold the power. Solicitors give you the best advice they can, and you have to choose whether or not you take it. Typically, hopefully, if you have a good solicitor and good at, you get along well, you will, because you'll be confident in that. But don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to challenge them. They're there to work for you. I would encourage every parent to always reply immediately to everything their solicitor asks for. The number of parents who say, oh, I've got a solicitor, and they don't actually, because they haven't returned their legal aid forms. They haven't signed the consent sheet. They haven't signed the mandate that allows the solicitor to work for them. Get those back immediately. I'm talking 15-minute turnaround to the time it hits your email. But unfortunately, don't expect the same turnaround time. That doesn't mean they're not paying attention. That doesn't mean they're not working hard in your case. Do share information with your solicitor, but expectation management on bundle size is important. Feel free to share lots of stuff with your solicitor, but know that in the courts, where time is tight and judges have limited attention span and ability to look at things, your bundle size is going to be limited. So if you're at that stage, don't be disheartened if your solicitor had to pick the top 30 things instead of all of the things. More independent reports are always better. If you have a child with an unexplained injury, with a rare illness, getting 2 or 3 different reports from different angles will be far more beneficial to your case than going with one general pediatrician report. Again, if your solicitor has experience in this type of case, they should know that, but don't settle for one medical report, and don't settle for the idea that legal aid can only pay for one report. Legal aid needs to be applied for by the solicitor, and the solicitor needs to have confidence to make a case for those reports. Legal aid will pay for just about anything, I've found out, but your solicitor has to prove to them that they think it's worth it in your case. So don't be afraid to tell your solicitor you feel this is really important and you want an application to legal aid made for this, because the odds are if they write a convincing statement, legal aid will pay for it. Now, if your child is still at home and you're going through all of the stress, you need to take care of you, but you also need to take care of them. And I know every mom will do the following, but I think it's important to highlight: keep consistent routines as best as possible. I know that's really difficult with a lot of meetings and intrusive appointments. Give them a worry journal. If they're at school, ask a teacher or support worker to work through this with them. I know that can feel like you're putting your whole, underwear drawer on display, but I found one of the best things I did for my kids was to give them worry journals and set them up at school with a teacher to sit down and give them a couple hours a week where they worked through their worries with them. Because I was distracted, my head was full of stress, and I knew that as best as I was able, I wasn't able to give them all of my best through this process. So I tried to surround them with support. And so I would also recommend getting them an advocate. There are really good children's advocates out there. There are some rubbish ones. Find somebody that your child connects with. And again, that way somebody else other than mom can say the things that the child needs them to say for the child without you getting spotlighted as the less believable one. I think it's also worthwhile saying, let go of the small stuff. When you're really, really stressed going through this and you're worried about every criticism, it's hard not to hyper-focus on keeping everything perfectly immaculate, practically mopping your ceilings every 48 hours. Let go of the small stuff. None of that actually matters. You need to just get through and sit down and make space to just breathe together, play together, and be yourselves together. try not to get caught up in the details. Most of all, reassure your children and surround them with additional support, but also take care of you because your child's watching and they're devastated by what this is doing to you. So what can organizations do to support parents? The first is what you've already done, which is creating a safe space. Parents need a place to gather safely. They need a place where they can speak openly without fear of repercussions. And I think there needs to be somebody, an ally, or somebody who's a little bit longer since their experience to offer support, as a lot of new parents will trigger each other. Unfortunately, there's so much that's so raw. And so sometimes it really needs somebody who's a little bit more removed from the situation to be able to be there to offer that support and be that support beam. But allow a big tent in a broad way of how you manage your group. There's going to be some people who go through this and the first thing they want to do is go and train to be a social worker. And that'll trigger some people. And there's going to be some people who want to burn it all down. And they'd like to radically tear apart the system. And that's important too. I think we need all voices in this, but we need a safe place for people to share a wide range of views and to support each other. Oops. Now, I think it's really valuable to gather and develop resources. And a few of these areas that I would recommend would be to gather case law and legislation. There's a growing number of cases that are supportive to parents in this area. I think putting together a list of reputable lawyers and legal teams that have experience and have done well by parents is helpful. Put together resources on community groups and support groups, because again, no one person can hold everybody up. Gather policy documents and procedure information and put it all in one place so that when the brand new parent walks through the door, they don't have to reinvent the wheel themselves. Developing how-to guides for subject access requests or templates, complaints, letters, etc. That's hugely helpful and saves a lot of new parents a huge amount of workload. Develop a list of medical experts. There's any number of us that have gone through these cases now and have had successful medical expert supports. There are medical experts out there who do not believe the FII theory, who are on this team, and putting together a list of them will, again, save a lot of legwork for the next person. Developing your own guidance and advice, looking for other organizations like PFAN for support and to get active in, and advocacy referrals. It's very heartening, and I'm quite hopeful as I watch more and more organizations and charities develop advocacy for parents. And it's probably worth having a list and developing a network of support for your families to gather advocacy for people who get it. And I think, as Andy talked about, one of the big things we can do is advocate for policy change, because we're better together. There's strength in numbers. We need to begin campaigning for change. One way of doing that is developing relationships with local authorities, governing bodies, legal teams, the judiciary, medical community. The more we can open up a line of conversation and create relationships within these areas, the more likely that we are going to rehumanize ourselves and begin to help them understand the impact that this system and these processes are having. These relationships are the bedrock for the conversations that we need to create a shift in this perspective. We can hold information sessions and webinars and conferences, and just open up spaces to begin to teach, but also to explore a lot of what the media, which is hugely beneficial in, I suppose, supporting a narrative change, but also getting people talking and making them aware of it. So much of this happens behind closed doors. I don't know about you, but I didn't even know what an FII accusation was until it landed on my lap. There's academics and there's charities and there's educational institutions who are all exploring and researching this. And I think we should keep pushing for more and more people to be looking into this and frankly, doing the work that Andy is of looking at numbers, looking at outcomes, looking at case studies and developing the research to show what, well, frankly, the lack of research shows. This isn't working. This isn't built on a sound model. We need to create a sound model, and we need to keep sharing stories safely because people's stories are hard to ignore. When you hear about somebody's experience, it brings you in, it reminds you that it could be you, and it helps you see the perspective in a more linear fashion. I think we, as a society or as a human beings, we all learn through stories, and it's really important to share our stories safely to create change.